Hi everyone. Thanks so much for coming to our presentation on ApisProtect, who we are and what we do and how we do it. My name is Dr. Fiona Edwards-Murphy and I'm the CEO and co-founder of ApisProtect. What we do at ApisProtect is we help commercially scaled beekeepers to reduce losses and increase productivity in their hives using a combination of sensor technologies and artificial intelligence concepts. Where this idea came from is I was working my background is in engineering, and I was working in an area called wireless sensor networks, which is essentially the field that ended up becoming the Internet of Things, which is where we use sensor technology to help collect data that can be useful in the real world from the real world. And back in 2012, 2013, I was learning about beekeeping and the challenges that beekeepers face all over the world, including things like poor colony conditions, the fact that labor is so difficult and expensive to source. The traditional beekeeping doesn't scale very well for situations like pollination. And the fact that there was a lot of scientific research into the problems that beekeepers were facing, but not very much of it was translating well into the realities of practical beekeeping, because a lot of the research had been done on colonies in the lab or in research institutions, not on practical real world beekeeping. I saw that one of the challenges behind these problems is the fact that there wasn't much data being collected from real world beekeeping in the field. So I started working on sensor technologies to collect data from beekeeping that was actually happening in the real world. So I spent 4 years working on my PhD in that area, putting sensor technologies inside in beehives, collecting data and seeing what I could understand from that data. And over those 4 years, I realized that this technology is very useful for understanding what's happening outside in beehives in the real world, and that machine learning, which is an artificial intelligence concept, if you add that on top of the sensor data, you can actually create an automated system that can identify problem beehives in the real world. So myself and one of my PhD supervisors and some other people came together to found ApisProtect in 2017. And our vision was to create a commercially scalable technology for beekeepers that could practically work in the real world. And the solution that we envisioned, which I've outlined here, was a sensor that goes inside in the beehives. It goes in there, it doesn't change the way that a beehive is laid out, it doesn't change the practical side of beekeeping, but it collects sensor data, brings that back over a variety of different kinds of networks to the cloud, where we could apply the machine learning that I mentioned earlier in order to understand what's going on inside that operation, what's going on inside each individual beehive, and then actually send that information back to the beekeeper in a very easy to consume way that can actually provide them with very quick information that can change their behaviors and improve their operation, improve the outcomes in their operation. And I mentioned earlier about machine learning, and essentially what that is a technology that learns from data in the real world, somewhat in a similar way to the way that humans learn. So what we do is we collect data and examples of sensor data from the real world. We show those examples as well as the information about what's going on inside those beehives. So we collect examples of healthy colonies, unhealthy colonies, colonies that are growing, colonies that are shrinking, colonies that have particular problems. We show them to our algorithm, and that algorithm actually learns about what's going on. It sees patterns in the data and is able to learn what patterns look like in different situations. And then when you start feeding it new sensor data, as long as you've done a good job of the training, it's then able to say, okay, I see that pattern. It looks similar to what a growing hive looks like. It looks similar to what a shrinking hive looks like. And then it's able to make a call and say, hey, this hive is growing, this hive is shrinking, that hive over there is doing some particular thing that I've seen before in the past. And what that machine learning algorithm is able to do then is provide really clear, very quick information back to the beekeeper. So this is a computer that's looking inside in the beehive 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's able to tell you, okay, well, right now I can see these particular problems coming up inside your operation. So we're really excited to create this machine learning algorithm, but that's a very lengthy process and involves collecting a lot of data and putting a lot of sensors out into the real world. So we've been through, over the last 3 years, 3 hardware revisions of our technology, trying to create something that can actually be deployed in the real world. So where we've come to now is we've got a really robust hardware setup that involves putting a base station in the yard of the beekeeper. You can see it here. It's solar powered. It's able to collect that information completely independently. It doesn't need any maintenance. Then we've got the sensor, the small sensor. It's about the size of a pack of or a deck of cards. That goes inside the roof of the beehive. It's 1.5 centimeters tall, or just about 3/5 of an inch. So that makes it small enough that it fits into most of the roofs in the commercial operations that we've worked with. We've also got a clever labeling system here that helps make sure that the sensor stays with the colony that it's looking at, because obviously over time we need to make sure that you're giving the same sensor the same colony's information. And we've gotten to the point now where this hardware can be deployed in less than 2 minutes per beehive. It can be entirely self-installed by the beekeepers on the ground, and they can be all set up using just a screwdriver. So you don't really need to be an expert in setting up telecoms equipment to install it in the field. And over the last 3 years, we've rolled out this technology to 400 hives, 20 different locations across 3 continents. So we've collected data from all over the world, a lot from the USA, so in the different regions, different hot and cold areas in the US, also here in Ireland, some in the UK, and some in South Africa. So it's been really interesting to collect data from all over the world, from beehives in probably as many different environments as we could find. So we've got some examples here of beehives in South Africa, some in the desert in California, some in another desert in Arizona. And then these are some here in the UK, up in the mountains in the UK. So what we've done is we've created a really diverse database for that machine learning algorithm to learn about. And what it's able to do is then understand what's going on in an operation, regardless of what the kind of external conditions are. It's not surprised by deserts, it's not surprised by swamps. So it knows what it's doing, regardless of where you take those beehives. And over the 3 years, what we've ended up doing is creating a really accurate algorithm that's able to detect events like when colonies are growing, when colonies are shrinking, which particular yards within the same operation need attention more than others. And what we've identified now is that this technology can actually help beekeepers to achieve, so this is actually pollination beekeepers, so people working in the almond industry in the US. We can help them create up to $98 of additional value each year for each hive that uses our technology. And how we actually achieve that is through increased labor and input efficiency primarily. So basically, that algorithm that I mentioned earlier is able to say, okay, you've got 3 yards. Yard number 1 really needs your attention right now. The hives there are shrinking, and yard number 2 or 3, the hives there aren't shrinking. So you really shouldn't waste your time inspecting, treating, feeding those beehives. You need to focus all of your attention on yard number 1. So that kind of helps improve the operation in 2 ways. One, it doesn't waste resources by inspecting, treating, feeding beehives that really don't need it. And secondly, it allows the beekeeper to spend a lot more time and attention on the beehives that actually have those problems, makes those problems much more likely to be solved, makes the outcomes of those beehives much more likely to be good, basically. Those hives are more likely to make it through to the next season. We also enable the beekeepers to objectively compare sites. So what we found is that often several sites run by the same operation with the same team, using the same inspection, treatment, feeding routines, can have completely different outcomes. And what we help beekeepers do is identify which sites are good and which sites are bad. I mean, like often that's down to things like the forage that's available locally, but it's kind of by objectively looking at the data from each of these sites, you can really quickly identify bad sites versus good sites, and try and get more yards near the good sites and less yards near the bad sites. And then finally, we help beekeepers plan much better for events. So things like transporting hives to and from pollination, splitting, requeening, overwintering. We help redeploy labor at busy times like those more efficiently, help identify things like failed splits, identify which hives shouldn't be put on the truck to go to pollination, things like that. And the way that we actually feed all of that information back to the beekeeper is through our really easy to use web platform. So you can see here the result of some of our algorithms. So this is a growth chart, and what we can see here is this particular apiary. The majority of the hives are static. A small number of them are declining. Very few of them are growing. This is actually a winter site, so we're actually pleased with this data. During the winter, the majority of your hives are staying static, they're not declining. That's a particularly good site. So you don't need to do anything, you don't need to worry about it not having any hives to go to pollination in January. And I've got some examples of data that we see coming out of these beehives here as well. So you can see here 2 beehives with a comparison of their temperature, and on the next slide I've also got humidity. So you can see how what we're looking at here it is the fluctuation. So you can see that this hive number 4 is fluctuating more than hive number 3, so that the orange hive is fluctuating more than the blue hive early in the period. Then it seems to go a bit lower, then it seems to become very similar to the blue hive. And essentially, as a beekeeper, as a person, you look at that and that doesn't particularly mean anything to you. But what our algorithm is able to do is it remembers every single temperature graph that it's ever seen, and it's able to say, well, I think that that orange hive is actually performing poorly compared to the blue hive. And then when we look at another beehive, or not another beehive, the temperature graph from the same beehives, you can see here that again, the orange hive is fluctuating a lot more than the blue hive. And again, our algorithm is able to have a think and go, yes, I don't think fluctuation at this time of year is a particularly good feature in humidity. And then it's able to, rather than having the beekeeper learn and understand about what temperature graphs and humidity graphs mean and having them pour through graphs upon graphs upon graphs for hundreds of beehives, the algorithm is able to do all of that thinking for them and just present the final piece of information, which is the orange hive needs attention and the blue hive doesn't. The other thing that we use in our algorithms to help us understand what's happening is weather information. So we also provide all of that information back to the beekeeper. Obviously, the same fluctuations in different weather conditions can mean completely different things. So our algorithm is able to handle all of the different situations that might occur. And ultimately, what we do is we provide insights to the beekeeper. So right now, we're able to do things like which hives are too hot, too cold, have hives been stolen. So we've got a movement sensor in there. Have hives been damaged by weather or animals? Which hives are outliers? So which hives are behaving very, very differently to the other hives in your operation? Those are really the ones that need attention most likely when you've got good conditions for treatments, and which hives are being more productive than others, and which hives are growing at the time that you're expecting them to grow. And over time, as we collect more and more data from the real world, as we scale up, we're going to be able to give insights into more detailed and specific events. So things like queen problems, something that we're working on, varroa levels, identifying more specifically what potential problems you've got in there, including things like starvation, diseases, and pests, estimating honey production, and also has the hive successfully created a winter cluster, so in colder climates. What all of this information helps beekeepers to do is manage their time and resources more effectively, check on their beehives remotely. So you can, through your laptop or your phone, find out the information about what's going on inside their colonies and evaluate the condition of them. And then finally, identify the weak colonies for intervention. And that's probably the primary way that we actually improve the financial position of an operation, is you're really only interfering with beehives that require intervention. And what our beekeepers see as a result of this is improved apiary management, improved operation management, increased productivity, so in terms of both pollination and honey, fewer losses, so you're able to stop those losses before they happen, and then finally better peace of mind. So when you know, you say that the last week of December, exactly how many beehives are alive right now. If you're hoping to go to almond pollination in January, then you can sleep a little bit easier if you know how many of your hives are alive and dead. So anyone who'd like to learn a bit more about our product or learn a bit more about ApisProtect and what we do, you can find us on our website. It's www.apisprotect.com. You can register there for our newsletter or follow us on social media. We're at ApisProtect on whatever medium you like to use. So I hope that you found this quick introduction to what we do interesting, and we're hoping that we hear from you in the future. Thanks so much.